We just want to keep Matt behind the scenes. Bye. All right, I'm going to duck out, and Heather's going to introduce Omisade. So here we go.
Yeah, so up next is a person who is a bright light in my world and who was so generous with their time and energy in doing programming and sharing space in North Star in our inaugural year. And I am just grateful for the work that they are doing right now. Omisade Burney-Scott is the creator of the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, which is a podcast that you can find in all the places that you find podcasts, exploring what can otherwise be a very mysterious thing that we move through as humans. And I appreciate all the context and storytelling that she's doing around it. So here to do some more storytelling, I'll welcome Omi. Hi. Do you see a little mute button on the bottom there? No? We're going to try again. We got this.
We got this. I will say this is one of my favorite things to do is have control, and that's sort of what I got right now. So I'm like, oh, Heather, that was cool that you said that, but I'm going to talk now. All right, we got Omi in, we got Heather in, I'm out.
Now can you hear me?
I can!
Ah!
Yay! Sorry about that. All these technology.
It was not you. It was me.
It's so nice to see your face.
It's good to see your face too.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay. When I as much.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna give it over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay. Hey folks. So I still feel like I have a little bit of an echo, but I'm just gonna go with it, and we'll see how it goes. All right, cool. So I've been thinking a lot about touch. In this time period that we're in for quarantining and people trying to take care of themselves, it's definitely been a process of me thinking about what touch I miss. I have a fantastic 11-year-old who I get hugs and kisses from all the time. And it made me think about romantic touch, my own pleasure, kisses, things like that. So I wanted to take, let's see, I'm going to turn my sound down. Here we go. I wonder, hey, look at that. Look what the technology. Okay, I only have 30 minutes, so let me get to getting. So I wanted to tell y'all a story, okay? You want to hear a story? This story takes me back to the summer of 1979. Summer of 1979 is the summer between elementary school and junior high. And that's a big deal. So y'all know junior high is challenging, to say the least, right? So there's kind of like this junior high sorting hat kind of situation where you're trying to figure out how to be seen, but not seen too much because you don't want to be bullied, how not to be invisible, what your identity is, who are the people you want to connect with. So 1979, my family, we lived in Maryland. We lived in Prince George's County, Maryland. And in the 70s and the early 80s in PG County, Maryland, there was a certain aesthetic and class norms, cultural norms around value, lovability, attractiveness. And I think that between 6th grade and 7th grade, or between elementary school and junior high school, my dial around fitting in, how I would be seen or perceived or valued started ratcheting up. And so I started getting more external cues around that. And that happened that summer. So let me tell you what happened. Summer 1979, I am excited. I'm ready to start Thomas Johnson Junior High in Lanham, Maryland. I was going to be walking into 7th grade, trying to establish myself. It's a 7th grade. Junior high school in Maryland was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then you went to high school in the 10th grade. And so there were a lot of folk who were ahead of me, who were in my neighborhood, who I knew were going to be at this junior high school. And I was excited to see them. I was also nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen in junior high, but junior high felt like a big deal, like a really big deal. So probably a month before school started, it must have been probably early August. I'm hanging outside of my house, as we often did in our neighborhood, with two of my childhood friends. So in this neighborhood, which was all African American, you had, look, somebody said Lanham. Shout out to Lanham in this comment. Like, a lot of people know PG County, but sometimes they don't know about Lanham. So that's really cool. So in this neighborhood, it was all African American. Each family had about 2 to 3 kids, and we were all in the same generational footprint. So I was born 1967. So that meant that the kid that was the oldest from me was only 2 or 3 years older, and the youngest the same. So we all went to elementary school together. Some of us went to preschool together. We went to junior high school together and would have gone to high school together if my family had not moved back to North Carolina. But I want to set the context. Prince George's County, Maryland is one of the most affluent communities for African Americans. Still, at that time, it was on the come up. So there were all of these cultural norms around who's considered attractive, right? And they often fall along the lines of class, and class often fell along the lines of socioeconomic status and color. So the colorisms that exist within the Black community around lightness, brownness, dark skin, hair texture, all those things, you kind of throw that in the mix with trying to figure out who you are before you start junior high school. And it's an interesting mix. So I'm hanging outside. I'm not going to use the names of the people who were party to this experiment or experience because I don't have their permission. So I'm going to tell my story, but not say their names. Okay. So I'm sitting outside with 2 friends. And one of our friends, who's a guy, comes up and we start chatting. We're hanging out. And he goes, you cannot start junior high school and not know how to kiss. And I was like, I know how to kiss. And he was like, no. French kiss. And I was like, what's the difference between a kiss, like, mwah, and a French kiss? He said, your tongue. I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. That sounds a little sketchy, a little gross, actually. And he was like, oh, okay. He's sitting on his bike. He said, yeah. All I know is that you can't start junior high school and not know how to kiss. Folk are not going to take you seriously. I was like, well, I want to be taken seriously when I start junior high school. I don't want somebody to take me for a chump or fluff, or I don't want to be invisibilized. So this felt like some secret squirrel, pivotal information, junior high school intel, data pivotal information that was critical to my acceptance in this new ecosystem that I was going to be operating in. So I said, all right. My friend said, all right. My other friend said, all right. So what this meant is that our childhood friend was going to kiss not one, not two, but all three of us on the same day, doing us a solid, helping us out, making sure we were prepared for junior high school. So my first friend goes behind. So in our neighborhood, all of our houses were very close together. We used to play behind each other's houses, play in the street, all that. The neighborhood was built up around our families. No one else had ever lived in this neighborhood except for the families who lived there then. So the first person to kiss this young man went behind our friend's house. And so I'm sitting there on the curb talking to my other friend, and we're like, I wonder what's happening. I wonder what this is like. You know, we're curious. And she comes out from behind the house. He stays behind the house. And she's really flushed in the face. And she's like, I got to go home. We were like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm okay. I got to go. And she left. No other information was shared. And we were like, wow, what happened behind the house? Like, what is up with this French kiss? This must be some serious stuff. You know what I mean? So anywho, second friend goes behind the house. So I'm sitting there like, just waiting my turn, not worried, but waiting. Like I literally sat there and waited my turn. So my other friend comes out from behind the house and she looks at me and she's like, that was disgusting. And I was like, was it really? He's like, absolutely disgusting. I said, oh, okay. So I sat there for a minute before I went behind the house because I was like, I don't want to do something that's going to be disgusting. Like I'm not interested in that. And I was also trying to sort out in my brain what was going to happen. So I was nervous. I could feel butterflies in my stomach. So I took a deep breath and I went behind the house and he was waiting there. And he said, are you scared? And I said, I'm nervous. And he was like, well, don't be nervous. We're just going to kiss. As if there was something else possible, which I'll come back to later. I was like, okay, all right. So the first attempt at the kiss was a catastrophe. It was a clashing of teeth, a little bit of a headbutt, and then I felt a little undone by the whole tongue thing. I was like, kind of like fighting the air, like, I don't like this. This is not good. I don't like this. And he said, okay, let's try this again. He says, take a deep breath. I said, okay. And he said, do what I do. Do what I do. I said, okay. So when he leaned in, I leaned in, and we found a rhythm, and we started kissing. And I was like, oh. And he pulled away, and he said, that was much better, right? I said, it was. And he's like, do you want to kiss again? And I was like, I do. So we basically kissed for another 15, 20 minutes behind my friend's house. And at the end of that kissing session, I remember feeling warm, flush in the face, heart racing, butterflies, a little excited to the point where I felt like I was a little nauseous, and I didn't understand that what I was experiencing for the first time was likely some arousal or pleasure. I was like, oh, I don't know what this is, but I liked it. So then he says, in a very earnest fashion that any 13-and-a-half-year-old boy does, you want to be my girlfriend? And of course, I said, all right, because that's what happens during the summer. And of course, during the summer between elementary school and junior high school, summer romances last about 2 weeks, and we stay true to our shelf life. We lasted about 2 weeks, and that's fine. It's no problem. But I've been giving some thought to all of the dynamics that took place that first kiss, right? It wasn't a first kiss that felt like it developed organically. It was orchestrated. It was orchestrated for me. I was kind of invited, but also kind of told, you should do this because it's beneficial for you. You should do this because you need this. You should do this. So that way, when you arrive in a new place that you already have concerns about, are worried about, this will give you what you need. So I want to go back a little bit. I talked about Prince George's County, Maryland, being a community in an area of the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area that's fairly affluent and full of affluent Black folk, right? And certainly during the 70s and 80s, you had people who could have good government jobs and buy a really nice house and take care of their kids and go to King's Dominion, go to Pennsylvania Dutch country, do all the things. This is the post-civil rights era, pre-Reaganomics, pre-crack. Within a year and a half of starting junior high school, you started to see the cracks. Reagan coming in, the politics changing, people who had good government jobs being downsized, divorces starting to happen. And then this new thing arrived, this new thing called crack. And that also did so much damage in that area. But I was going to be walking into the doors of Thomas Johnson Junior High in September of 1979, a very brown, solidly middle-class Black girl, right? So what, Omi? What does that mean? In the context of that time, I was considered too brown. My brownness was too brown. It wasn't light enough to be considered valuable or attractive. That's the narrative that was shared societally at that time period of the 70s and the 80s, and certainly culturally, right? I also had, I don't consider my brownness a misfortune now. I did then. But I did have the great misfortune of having also, going into 7th grade, a terrible, terrible haircut. So I don't know if folk remember Dorothy Hamill. Dorothy Hamill won all of these gold medals in the 1976 Olympics. And I loved her haircut. It was like the proverbial 70s stack. It's like that. And I was like, oh, what would it look like for me to walk into junior high school with a Dorothy Hamill stack? That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. So I'd already gotten this kiss, which we're gonna go back to. But then my mom and her best friend decided that they could cut my hair. I didn't need to go to the salon because they could figure it out. They had been hanging out, probably eating good food, maybe had a couple of cocktails. It was summertime. My aunt, who was my mom's best friend from high school, lived in Brooklyn. She had come to Maryland to visit. So they were doing what girlfriends do during the summer, enjoying each other's company, eating good food, drinking good cocktails. And I plopped into their conversation and said, Mommy, I want to get a Dorothy Hamill stack. And she was like, oh, well, let me see this stack. I said, okay. So I showed it to her. And my Aunt Barbara said, well, let me see the stack. So I showed her the stack. And she said, I could do that. You know, there's something about gin that facilitates people having a, I don't know, unwarranted, unrealistic sense of confidence in their abilities. And my Aunt Barbara, with the gin, said, I'm going to cut your hair. So I sat down between her legs and my Aunt Barbara, like Edward Scissorhands, gave me a gin version of a Dorothy Hamill stack. It didn't go well. It didn't go well. So I had to go to our regular beautician, Miss Shropshire, to fix it because it was bad. Like, it was different lanes, and she was trying to do her version of layering, which meant that there were some really short. So suffice to say, I got a corrective haircut after getting the Dorothy Hamill haircut, which made it even shorter, which means I'm walking into junior high school with a growing awareness of feeling like I'm likely going to fall short in the 7th grade junior high school sorting hat. You know, it's like Hogwarts. You get thrown in the hat, they sort you out. You're an athlete, talented and gifted, popular, popular and attractive, bullied, invisible. There were all these little places where you could land. And I was, I guess in retrospect, this is 41 years ago, in retrospect, was trying to right size myself to be seen, not too much, because I didn't want to be bullied, and to be seen as something that had value, someone who held value, someone who was attractive, someone that people want to be around. And so I'm gathering information around what's necessary for that to be so. Okay? So I got the terrible haircut, but what I did have now in my arsenal was I knew how to French kiss. So if in fact some other junior high school student found me attractive, I at least knew how to kiss, which when you're going on 13, when you're 12, that felt like some really important power to have, perhaps. So when I thought about the story, so that's the story, y'all. So when I thought about this story and wanting to share this with you all, I've been thinking a lot about pleasure, intimacy, vulnerability post 50. And while we've been quarantining and social distancing, I've been thinking about what will touch be like when we return to each other. If you're not experiencing touch now, for whatever reason, what will that be like? And I realized in the moment that I was told I needed to learn how to kiss, I didn't actually give consent. It was passive. It was a very passive consent. It was like, okay, did I really want to do it? Not necessarily. Did I feel like it was going to be beneficial? Maybe. Did I trust the person who was going to teach me how to kiss? Yeah, definitely trusted him. This is somebody who I've been in their house, they've been in my house. We played together, we created games together. I like this person. So it felt kind of like a shrug consent, which I don't believe in anymore. I don't believe in the, okay, maybe. I mean, why not? No, that's not the consent that I walk with or call for. It's an active consent. It's a robust consent. It's a communicative consent. What am I consenting to? And if at any point I'm not down with this anymore, I can take that back, right? But that's not how that went down in 1979. And so it just kind of happened. Yeah. I don't regret it happening. But in retrospect, I realized that I didn't have any real agency over that experience or my own pleasure with that experience. It all kind of just happened to me, right? It happened upon me. It happened. And so I've been thinking about not wanting that. Like, I don't want my consent to be passive. And I also wanted people who are thinking about, well, what happens as you age as it relates to relationships, love, intimacy, pleasure? I don't know if people are thinking about that. I hope you're thinking about that, because you should be able to access that and experience that for as long as you want. And so I want people to know that you're never too old to be deprogrammed from your coding, whatever that coding is. Coding around your identity, coding around your lovability, coding around your desirability, coding around your own pleasure and accessing that, coding around relationships and what are the right relationships. I feel like I operated very much in a binary, is it was either this or that, good or bad, wrong or right, valuable, not valuable, lovable, not lovable, right? And I don't believe that. I don't believe in that any longer. So I wanted to say that. And I also wanted to say that it's never too late to reimagine or reclaim your agency over your pleasure. So if I could go back and have a conversation with my 12-year-old self that summer between elementary school and junior high school, I would ask questions. I would ask her, do you want to be kissed? Do you want to explore how kissing somebody differently will feel like? Did you enjoy that kiss? Would you like to do it again? There's so many ways that we get to reclaim and reimagine our own agency. I also think about this because I'm a mom and really trying my best. I have two sons, one who's 28 and one who will be 12, who's in middle school, who will be 12 in October. And so what I've tried to do, absolutely in the last 10 years, 11 years, is to figure out my own coding, deprogram or unlearn that for myself, and also do the hard work of being in the practice of having these open conversations with my sons about their identities and how they experience intimacy, pleasure, vulnerability. Following their lead, providing information, asking questions, and helping them learn and remember to trust their gut, their second brain, which is so smart. So I want to leave you all with a little piece from Adrienne Marie Brown's Pleasure Activism. So Adrienne came to North Carolina last August, and she did a book launch, a talk back with pleasure activism at North Star, which was dope. And I got to be on a panel with her and Mama Nia Wilson from Spirit House. And we talked about pleasure, how we're accessing pleasure as Black women over 50 who live in the American South, and what that looks like for us. Pleasure we can access with ourselves, within ourselves, and also in relationships, whether those relationships are platonic or romantic or sexual, or all of those things. And so this book is a fantastic book. So I'm going to read you the pleasure principles from the beginning of the book. So once again, it's Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown. And she gives us 6 principles. The first principle is what you pay attention to grows. This is also in her book, Emergent Strategies, which talks about how we can learn from the natural world all that we need to know to support and sustain social justice movements from a place of love, right? Radical love. And so what you pay attention to grows. And this is really important because she says you need to tune into happiness, what satisfies you, what brings you joy. The second principle is we become what we practice, right? So if anybody's ever had a yoga practice or somatic practice or a spiritual practice, you know that the more you do it, the more rhythm you have, the more you return to it, the more muscle memory you have, the more it's embodied. And so she wants to remind us that we become what we practice. And if we don't practice accessing pleasure, then that's not who we are. So we can return to that. The next one is yes, it's the way. And she says, when it was time to move to Detroit, when it was time to leave my job, when it was time to pick up a meditation practice, time to swim, time to eat healthier, I knew it gave me pleasure when I made and lived that decision. Now I'm letting that guide my choices of how I organize from what I am aiming towards in my work, pleasure in the process of my existence and state of being. Yes, it's the future. When I feel pleasure, I know I'm on the right track. So the next one is when I'm happy, it is good for the world. You just cannot argue with that. When you're happy, when I'm happy, when other folk are happy, it is good for this world. Because happy people treat themselves better, and they treat their neighbors better, and their family members better, and their partners and their kids, and the cat and the dog, and the person who works at the grocery store. It's just, it translates into a better connection. Second to the last one. The deepest pleasure comes from riding the line between commitment and detachment. Commit yourself fully to the process, the journey, to bringing the best you can bring. Detach yourself from your ego and the outcome. And last, make justice and liberation feel good. And that's hard. We live in a world and a society that often doesn't see a human being when they look at brown and black people. We know this. We know this. So finding ways to make liberation and social justice movement work pleasurable, that's a healing justice practice and commitment. So I'm done. I hope you all enjoyed my little story from 1979. Fun fact, that fall, I would get my period for the first time. And that took me into a whole other conversation around sex, pleasure, not getting pregnant, all those things. maybe if we do this a third time, I'll come back and tell that story. All right. Hey, I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna take a sip of my spiked tea.
Take it. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope folk are going to the North Star page and figuring out ways to be a Patreon. And I hope they're also figuring out ways to support the Pinhook. I've been a beneficiary of the Durham Artists Relief Fund. It came at a time when I really needed it. You know, as an artist who also does social justice work, I operated in the gig community. And so when your gigs go away, you start looking at your coins and trying to figure out how to hold some, how to grow some, how to cultivate some. And y'all came right at the perfect time.
The journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was really nice to share some time with you. And I appreciate your capacity to weave stories into art and into really important things that we need to meditate on right now and be thinking about. So thank you for that gift of helping us consider those things and consider the ways that we are right now, and that we can be and what we can be learning right now. I just wish you were here. I wish you were.
I wish I was there too.
On these front steps, hanging out. But
it's a good space. I can feel the good space from there. I miss y'all.
Driving like crazy down here. I was like, oh, I'll come out here. It'll be nice and quiet. Well, be well.
I will.
See your face soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Y'all check out Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause when you get a chance. It's a really, really powerful podcast, not only in the stories that Omi is telling, but the guests that she's having on to have these conversations are just really, really special.